Let's talk briefly about a very important concept from these chapters, this idea of a contribution margin. As mentioned before, the contribution margin is the sales minus the variable cost. Let's talk about how to calculate the contribution margin for 1 unit of sales. The contribution margin is the selling price minus the variable cost that having that extra unit of sales is causing the company. So an extreme example is the airline industry. So pause and think. If you're running an airline and you're doing flights from Raleigh to Atlanta back and forth, what types of costs do you mostly have, fixed or variable? You mostly have fixed cost because whether there are 10 passengers or 80 passengers, it costs about the same to get an airplane from Raleigh to Atlanta. You've got to pay the pilots. They don't get paid based on how many people are on the plane. They get paid a salary. The flight attendants are paid salary whether there's 10 passengers or 40. So what's the variable cost of having one more passenger? A pack of peanuts, a soda. There's some cost involved with handling their tickets. If you're Southwest Airlines, there's cost involved with handling their baggage. The other companies tend to charge for that. So I made up some numbers. So let's say for a flight from Raleigh to Atlanta, the ticket price is $90, and the airline figures out that the variable cost I caused by being on the plane, just me, is $17. So the airline would look at it as, if we sell Dennis O'Reilly a ticket for $90, it will cost us $17 to give him some peanuts and a soda and handle his luggage. That still leaves $73 to contribute to paying the fixed cost of the flight, the pilot's salaries, the cost of the plane itself, the cost of the fuel, the flight attendant salaries, the advertising the airline does. I would be contributing $73 to paying the fixed cost, plus hopefully the airline will get some profits. You might say, wait, is fuel for an airline fixed or variable? Well, it depends on what the cost driver is. If the cost driver is just one individual passenger, which is the scenario I'm painting, fuel cost would be fixed because the cost of having me on the plane, yes, it will take a tiny bit more fuel to get me in the air along with this giant plane, but the vast, vast majority of the cost of the fuel is to get the airplane into the air, not one specific passenger. So the airlines would look at fuel cost as a fixed cost. This contribution margin per unit idea is useful to summarize your break-even formula that we're working with. In the numerator, you put your fixed cost, and in the denominator, you put contribution margin per unit. So notice the numerator is fixed cost in total. The denominator is on a per unit basis. So there was a time where airlines would do something called standby, where if you wanted to get a cheap flight somewhere, you could go to the airport and wait at the gate. And if there were any seats left over, they would sell those to you at a much cheaper price. Now, why would the airline have been willing to do that? Well, as you can see, the variable cost of letting you on the flight is pretty low. So as long as they charged you a price higher than the variable cost on the screen, $17, that was better than letting that seat go empty, because an empty seat on the plane contributes how much to the fixed cost? 0. So as long as they could charge more than the variable cost, they often consider that to be better than letting a seat go empty. The airlines, for the most part, do not do that anymore. What they've decided instead is it would be better to charge last-minute customers very high prices instead. Instead of giving them a low price, they'd rather let some seats go empty so that every once in a while they catch that desperate person who desperately needs to get to Oklahoma City for some meeting and is willing to pay a crazy high price of $1,300 to get on that flight. If you're wondering if there are any types of businesses where you could negotiate a lower price based on what you're seeing on the screen, yes, you can occasionally negotiate a lower price in the hotel business. If you are traveling someday on the interstate and you stop at a hotel that you can tell from the parking lot is mostly empty, and it's already 11 o'clock at night where they know there's not going to be some big rush of customers, you can go to the desk And if they say it's $125 to stay here tonight, you can offer something much lower, say $80. And not always, but sometimes they will say yes. Why would they say yes? Because a room that sits empty is going to have a contribution margin of 0, right? Most of the cost of running a hotel are fixed cost. It's the building and paying the workers. The variable cost comes in having to pay someone to clean that room. And it doesn't cost $80 to clean a room. So if you offer $80 for a room that otherwise will sit empty, they would be smart in most cases to take your $80, because maybe it costs $20 to clean the room, and you would still be contributing $60 to pay the fixed cost. Now that's not a guarantee. Often hotels will say no to that offer, but it doesn't cost you anything to try it.